Okay, this video is called A Music Tribute to Mothers. And it's a long story what made me sad thinking about my mom again. But I'm just going to give you the songs that, when my mother died, she died of cancer. And at the time, I was a young guy. I was just finishing up my first fellowship at Harvard. And, I was super sad. I was closer to my mother than to any other person in the whole world. And I also sort of felt like a failure. Here I am supposed to be Mr. Smart Doctor, and I really couldn't help my mother. At that time, I just thought you send them to the specialist, you get the best specialist you can find, and you hope for the best. In retrospect, I'm kind of pissed off because I hadn't realized at that time I could go into any cognitive field. Now, you can't learn a surgical field fast because it takes years and years of experience of doing those procedures to get really good at them. But in a cognitive field, quite often, the average practitioner, they got an IQ of about 120. They're hardworking, but they're just conformists. They just do whatever they were trained, okay? They don't really read or think. I know tons of doctors, and almost never does a doctor ever tell me they read anything, okay? They're so overwhelmed after they get done with their training, exhausted. They just want to have a family. And, they go to CME and it's a big joke. They'll sign their attendance in the morning and then go to the beach or something. The CME doesn't really teach almost anything. The only doctors that keep on learning are the ones that want to, that specifically read a lot on their own and start reading in other fields. Okay, so anyways, um, I like cried every day for a year. I mean, this is the song I listened to the most was Ozzy Osbourne. I'm going through changes. I like the other Ozzy Osbourne song, Mama, I'm Coming Home. Don't Leave Me This Way by Thelma Houston. Those are the three songs I listen to the most. I listen to each one of those songs like 1,000 times. These other songs, some of them I didn't learn about till later, but they sort of capture the feeling. Carter Family, this is the best country music song ever made. I'll put the links to all this stuff below. Will the circle remain unbroken? Okay, my mom was really religious, and that's another big lesson that I learned is she was the best person I ever met in my life. Everybody that knew her thought she was like a saint, and she was constantly making jokes. She was like a comedian, okay? She was like a lot funnier than Roseanne Barr, and in a much nicer way. But Roseanne Barr is pretty clever and funny, okay? But anyways, I saw how it happened. I saw how her life was and how she made things better for so many people. She adopted a couple girls, that were going through difficult times with their families. Our house was constantly having people come through to stay for a couple days because my mom was taking care of them. She had got her training as a social worker, but she was sort of like a social emotional genius. I mean, she never read a book. I never saw my mom once read a book cover to cover. But man, did she understand people and social situations. When I was young, I always go to my dad because he's kind of like me, student athlete. He was a boxer, valedictorian, all that stuff. But the older I got, man, I always went to my mom for advice because she gave me better advice. She understood people way better than my dad did, even though he was a psychiatrist. Let's see, what other things are worth knowing here? I like the Elvis song, the Johnny Cash song. The best song, and these are the two best songs about, one's mother, relationship with one's mother, and the sadness at her passing. Los Angeles Azules and Vincentico, Los Caminos de la Vida. And then also this thing about Exodus 15:26. Well, what is that about? That's about the idea of God's way of healing. Like I said, I just figured there's nothing you could do. I didn't realize back at that time, you could read all the stuff, and once you learn the metabolic theory of cancer, then it becomes pretty obvious what you want to do. And the so called God's way of healing, uh, that came up from a lady, Dr. Lorraine. She said that, and she was right. Basically, if you get your diet ready, fixed, you manage your stress. She didn't know anything about toxins, that lady, but it's true. For the chronic diseases, this low fat, low sodium, whole food, vegan, organic only, avoid toxins, that's more powerful than anything else in medicine by a factor of 1,000. I didn't know it. The sunshine. She was great on all the other stuff, the social stress reduction and all that kind of stuff. But I sort of felt bad, like I had failed her. And anyways, after she died, I made a big PowerPoint presentation, showed to all my family and relatives, and I started studying Spanish in more detail. I had, initially when I was born, Spanish was kind of frowned upon. America was very, pro-America. It was the best country in the world. Everybody in the world wanted to come to there. And my dad, I think, frowned on it when we were born. And then my mom tried to teach us Spanish when we were little, and we rejected it. Once a kid can say no, they don't want to do anything. And of course, I took it in school, got A's in school, but that's irrelevant. You don't really learn much in school. And I chatted with her a little bit in Spanish through med school and occasionally during residency, but not that much. I even wrote a book about Spanish, how to learn Spanish when I was younger, but my Spanish really wasn't that good. So I started Spanish almost because it kept me closer to my mother. It's almost like, why do you want to hear the sad songs even though they make you sad after your mother dies? Because it makes you feel closer to her. That's why you do. It makes it almost seem like she's still alive, like you still have a relationship with her here on Earth. So, anyways, that's why it came about. And then to learn Spanish, I went and ended up reading Da Vinci Code and listened to 16 audio CDs of it, to get to a high level in my Spanish. Basically, the whole secret of learning a second language is you have to focus on communication, not on grammar. Grammar is a waste of time. No kid learns their first language from grammar. They learn it from wanting to communicate with other people. So, anyways, I would have done anything for my mother. I just didn't know. I didn't know that you could study cancer on your own and learn more about it than any, cancer specialist knows because they're trained in the conventional perspective. They don't know the other stuff. And the doctors took care of my mom. They were the best ones we could find, and they meant well. And the wife of the oncologist was a close friend of our family. She actually stayed in our house for a couple of weeks taking care of my mother. And my mom outlived her prognosis. Instead of living only 2 years, she lived about 11 years. But anyways, I think you'll really like these songs, so hopefully you'll enjoy them.